All right, in this video, what we're trying to do is fix the touchscreen on this gun. This is the Symbol or Motorola MC9190, I believe. Let's see here, Yep, 9190. So with these guns, we have a few of them at work, and I've researched and nobody had a video on how to replace the Digitizer, and which is what I'm assuming is wrong with it. You can see if you click on it, it doesn't know what you're clicking. You can scroll here and it won't scroll. It just has a square. Even if you use the little thingy here, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And I've tried to align it. And if you try to align this gun, it doesn't recognize the touches. Even if when it does, it won't align because it's thinking they're being touched in the wrong spot. So you'll notice here, it asks me to realign again and again and again and again. And I'll keep doing this because the Digitizer is not working correctly. So we're gonna take it apart. To do this, a number 2 Phillip head and a smaller, I don't know what size it is, but it's significantly smaller, probably a 0 or 00. All right, first off, we're gonna take the little piece here, the little sling, and that takes a little bit of finagling. Then we've got to take the battery out, and we're gonna take 4 screws out to begin with. These 2 little front ones, 1 and 2. And I try to keep them separate. And then there's 2 inside of the gun. I don't know if you can see them or not, but there's 1 all the way on the edge and 1 all the way on the edge. One. And that's the other. Let's hope my cameraman can keep the camera steady the whole time. All right, then this is one of the toughest parts, and it's actually, you're gonna feel like you're breaking it, but you're not. You're gonna have to slide this forward, and you have to really be, it has to be controlled, because if you jerk it off, it's gonna pull the wires out. So you have to kind of put your hands on it and make sure you're pulling on it, but you're not gonna yank it off when it comes off. So I could feel it came a little loose. And again, it takes a lot of effort, but once it breaks loose, all you gotta do is lift up, and you'll see 3 wires here that need to come off. They're for the trigger, for the speaker, and for the sensor in front of the screen. So 1 and 2, and the 3rd one is the hardest. Even putting it back on is pretty hard. And there's the handle. Now, next step. We've got a few things that have got to come off. I'll start off with taking this part, which is the little laser, and you'll see why. So to take that off, there's a little black flap here, and I don't know if you can see it on it, this little black flap. I'll flip it up with my nail, and pull that off to disconnect it off of the board. Then you'll notice there's 4 screws. One of them is a little longer because that one goes all the way through the board. But in the meantime, the 3 smaller screws are the same size. So I don't care about mixing those together. And the 4th. And you'll notice the 4th is much longer because it goes through the board and through everything else. And there's the piece, comes right off. So I'm gonna keep it with the screws for it all in one spot. Next thing, and the reason why I removed that one first is because there's 2 little antennas underneath it, and you'll have to just yank those off because those will connect to this board, and if you don't take them off, then you can't take the board off. And you're gonna have to just clip it off. That's one. And the same thing with the other one. You just go underneath it and flip it up. And it's just a regular old little, they use these on laptops and everything else. Then we're gonna take these 4 screws off to remove this board, which also houses the battery, I believe, and that's the plug for it, which we're gonna have to unplug. So you just pull that wire up, and that, I believe, is the backup battery. And then you just take these 4 screws out. 1 and 2. And you'll notice that the 2 top ones, these ones, are shorter, kind of like on the other one, and these are longer because these 2 go all the way through the board, but these will bolt onto this piece of metal. So that's 2. And that's 3 and 4. And this will lift off as a whole. I'm going to keep the bolts in it. Just put it aside. And now we've just got the board and the heatsink. We're going to take the 5 leftover screws, because notice those are the screws that I was talking about that go all the way through. There's a few of them on the board that we pulled off already. So now there's just the 4 outside ones and the center one here. So as we pull these off, this board should come off. And again, all of these screws are that same little screwdriver. The only ones that were number 2 were the 2 that were in here. And you'll notice, you're gonna ask, why am I taking this apart? Because it's all part of the same thing, and I'll show you why in just a second here. So once these come off, this should lift right up. And there's 2 plugs that are the reason we took that off. Otherwise, the whole unit would lift off together. There's one little plug here, and that's for this top speaker. And this little plug right here, which is the screen. Because you'll notice that the screen, the keyboard, I'm sorry. That would be with this keyboard. And you'll notice that this keyboard is going to stay in place, and we're going to lift this whole unit out of place. And it's really simple. You're just going to wedge anything in there and lift it off, and it should come right off. And just wedge it against the rubber so you're not breaking or shorting anything, and it should come right off of the whole unit. Now, the last cord is the actual cord for the Digitizer, which is this one, and that connects to this, which was what we're replacing. So to get this one off, you're gonna have to wedge something underneath this little white part, which I wish I had a razor blade or something, but you'll notice I pushed that little white part off, and then this just pulls right out. And voila, that's the screen. Keep it clean, keep it away. That way it doesn't get any dust or dirt on it, because that you'll never get back to again. Now, this is what we're replacing. This is the part that's bad. And to get it off, you're just gonna kind of press on the edges. I've seen people take razor blades to them, but you can literally just press on it, and the pressure is just gonna get that glue undone. You could probably hear it, and it'll just come right off. And now you'll notice there's the little double-sided tape still in there. This stuff literally, it depends on how hard you've used it and how caked on it is. This stuff comes right off, and you could pull it off or roll it off, and clean all that up before you start working on a new one. Okay, now that we have all of the residue removed, which was pretty easy, I just removed it with my hand. I like to take some rubbing alcohol and just wipe it with it. That way I know I don't have any extra crap on there. And just literally just wiping it just to clean. And just wipe it off, clean it off. And then just let it sit a couple seconds to dry. While that's happening, when I purchased these, they said that they're for this unit. And I noticed that the wire tip is just a little different. You can see that this one has a couple of ears on it. I don't know if you can see that or not. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut them off with a pair of scissors. That way I know that they're gonna fit in the right spot. Now I don't wanna take too much off the edge at all because it needs the center back where it needs the center. So the ears are off, and it looks very similar to the other one now. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this protective film off. I like to keep it clean. And then take this sticker off. And then you have the same type of material that was on, so you could just drop it in place and it'll glue back into place. Now before I go any further, I'm just going to take this film back off and put it on here so I don't scratch it as I'm doing any work to it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the edges just so you know you get that adhesive to stay. Now once you put all the boards together and rebolt it back in, it'll have pressure against it to where it should work just fine. But in the meantime, you just want it to stay in place. And once that's done, you can start putting it back together, which the first part is the screen. I'm going to peel that off. I don't have a pair of tweezers, but it'd be nice to have a pair of tweezers because I imagine this is going to be really hard. I bent it at a 90 so that way I could try to sneak it in there. And it is in there. Now I'm just going to take my little screwdriver and clip that little white clip back into place and make sure it's nice and tight. I'm going to make sure that this plug stays out because we need to plug it back in. And I need to go sneak it underneath that plug first. Keep this up and make sure that these little ridges align into place so that way it's aligned straight over the digitizer. So I go around and I make sure that all of these things align. Make sure that this cord is out and it's not being pinched, and then just press it into place. Just like so. Now we start plugging things back into place. And I think I could do these. So, and I have fat and ugly fingers, so if I can do them, you could probably do them. That's the keyboard plug. And now we can start putting these things back into place. So you don't have to really remember which ones they were, because if you start putting these back into place first, then you'll find them automatically. But I do remember where they're at, but I'm gonna show you what you can do. So we're gonna put things back in the order we took, in the reverse order we took them off. So remember these two antennas, that's the reason we took that off, and so we gotta put this back on first. So as you put these into place, you'll notice that these two longer screws are gonna go into their place, and those two shorter screws are gonna go into their place. We'll start off with those. And I don't tighten them all the way just yet because I want to have an even pressure and everything so you don't break things. And so as those are in place, I'm going to go ahead and plug the plugs into place. That's the little backup battery plug. And let's hope I can do these antennas. If not, my friend already brought me tweezers because he's pretty awesome. So that's one. Let me see where this one goes. And that's the second one. So I've got the antennas into place, and I've got the backup battery in place. So that's the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten them just a little bit further, and then we'll go to the next module, which was this unit. And that'll sit up here. And with this one, remember that top left one was the longer screw that went all the way through the board. Put that in first. Again, I didn't tighten it all the way. And then I've got three little ones that are going to go around it. And none of these are magnetic, neither is my screwdriver, so you'll see I might be dropping screws every now and then. now that they're all in place, I'll go ahead and tighten them a little bit more. And this ribbon cable is pretty easy to go in. You just put it back into place and you close that flap, and now it's stuck in place. And now we've got the rest of the screws to put in. So we have 5 left. So these are going to go center, right, bottom, right over here, and right over here. And that's why I said you didn't have to worry about where they went, because you'll have just enough holes for the rest of the screws, which are all longer ones. But you could always kind of take a picture before you take it apart. You could always tell where the screws go. We're almost ready to test it. All right, so now that it's all back together that far, I don't have to put the handle back on while I test it, because all of the other plugs are in, and this is just for the trigger and a speaker. And I've got a trigger and I don't need a speaker. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the battery in. Make sure I don't put my hands all over these things in case anything can short out. And we're gonna see if it fires up. So that's the device. I'm gonna get the little stylus out. I'll wait for it to boot, and then we'll see how it goes. And if all of that went okay, then all I gotta do is plug in those little 3 plugs, put the handle back on, and put those 4 last screws in. I think it might just take a little longer to boot because we removed the backup battery as well. Let's give it a few seconds and then we'll see if these things will, if this will work. I'm gonna dismiss that. So the dismiss already worked. I'm gonna click on that little wireless and execute. I think it's just still booting, but I can tell that it is responding to the touches of this already without aligning it even. But I'll go ahead and align as well, and I know that it takes 2 tries to align usually. I'm gonna let it finish booting first. I think it's doing something. But I honestly don't even think that I need to align it. It's already working a million times better than it was. I can scroll back and forth. I can click the window. I can click the little wireless. I can exit out of there. So all in all, I think it's a success. And that's exactly what was wrong with it. And again, like I said initially, I got a little scared when I saw that the little plug was a little different, but it's got 4 wires, it fit. When I bought it, they said it would work, and it did work. But again, I don't think I would have been able to fit it into the slot with those ears on there. So, but yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and try to align it to show you that it would align. And again, I know that it takes, I think, 2 tries to align it, but you can tell already it's responding a million times better, and it aligned the first try. So overall, I'm gonna go ahead and take the battery out, put the plugs back in, and put it all back together, and then we'll take another video and see how it goes. So we're just putting the last 3 plugs back into place, and then we're gonna put the handle back on. So you'll see those 3 are back on, and those were the only 3 that are left. I think this is for like some data port or something. I don't know what it's for, but either way, everything that we took apart is back on. And to put this back into place, the best way of doing it is, you see that lip there? This other lip is gonna go underneath it. So I start off with this side, I put it into place, and then I push back, and it goes right back into place. Now we've got the original 4 screws that came off. The 2 front ones are gonna be the smaller screw. and the two back ones are going to be really pain in the behind because they're non-magnetic, and I'm going to have to go upside down into the gun without having a light. So I'm probably going to drop them like 15 times. But if you have a better way of doing it, that's more power to you. But first try on the second one. The first one I dropped a few times, but either way, what you're gonna end up doing is putting these two back screws back on. And let's go ahead and power it up and test everything. Make sure the trigger works, make sure you hear the beeps or anything like that you need to hear, and we'll go from there. But I've got the battery in there. It's gonna automatically power up. And I just wanna make sure that the trigger works really, that's all I care for. The antennas should work as well, but right now we don't have, these are part of a network at work, and they're not gonna connect here, so I'm not worried about that. I know the antennas went in. The speaker worked. The other speaker worked, I think. That's the louder one. So I'm just waiting for it to finish boot. I know the battery is low. Clearly the speakers are working. The laser works just fine. The trigger. And that's really all I cared for. And again, if I click on something, it now actually works versus, you know, not working before. So, and you saw the alignment worked flawlessly the first time. So these parts were really cheap. They were like $8. Computech wanted $475 to do this job. It took me literally 20 to 25 minutes, I think, and the part was $8. So that's it. Thank you.